If you're here because you care about how societies fed themselves under pressure, subscribe to the channel now and stay with me, because this subject cuts straight to the intersection of survival, strategy, and environmental control. For the next several minutes, we're going beyond the familiar image of the lone plow and into systems that quietly sustained empires, armies, and civilian populations for centuries. These weren't accidents or folk traditions. They were engineered landscapes designed for resilience under drought, flood, warfare, and political collapse. What most modern audiences miss is that agriculture has always been a form of logistics. Long before mechanized farming, ancient peoples understood that food security was terrain-dependent, labor-efficient, and inseparable from long-term survival. The systems we're covering today weren't just productive. They were defensive, regenerative, and astonishingly adaptable, qualities that matter just as much now as they did thousands of years ago. Why ancient agroforestry mattered more than sheer crop yields? Agroforestry in the ancient world wasn't about maximizing short-term output. It was about stabilizing food systems across generations. Trees, shrubs, crops, and animals were integrated to buffer against climate swings, labor shortages, and conflict. This really mattered because, ancient societies just didn't have fossil fuels, synthetic fertilizer, or rapid transport. If your land failed, well, there was simply no backup supply chain. The solution then was diversity layered both in space and in time. Modern readers actually can apply this right away by rethinking monoculture gardens. Even on a small plot, mixing nitrogen-fixing trees with perennial food plants and annual crops, it really does reduce risk. The Chinampa system, for example, shows how wetlands became true food engines. In the basin of Mexico, farmers built raised agricultural islands in shallow lakes, most famously around Lake Texcoco. These Chinampas, combined canals, trees, and crop beds into a single self-renewing system. Nutrient-rich mud from the canals fertilized the fields, while trees anchored the soil and helped to moderate temperature. This system, interestingly enough, produced multiple harvests per year with minimal inputs. From a survival standpoint, Chinampas were nearly famine-proof. Floods, rather than destroying them, actually enriched them. For a modern application, this, translates quite well to flood-prone land. Raised beds combined with water channels and perennial roots can turn excess water into an asset instead of a threat. So the Maya Milpa was actually a rotating forest farm, not some kind of slash-and-burn chaos. The Milpa system used throughout the Yucatan Peninsula is often misunderstood. It wasn't about destructive clearing. Instead, it was rotational agroforestry. Maize, beans, and squash were grown alongside managed trees, and then, the land was allowed to regenerate into forest before being used again. The real genius of Milpa lies in, the timing. Trees restored soil fertility, suppressed pests, and provided fruit, medicine, and timber while the fields were resting. For those thinking in long-term survival terms, this really teaches patience as a productivity tool. You can actually replicate this by rotating your garden zones, allowing one section to transition into a perennial food forest while another handles your annual crops. Mediterranean dehiscence landscapes, they fed people and animals together. Across the Iberian Peninsula, the dehiscence system integrated oak trees, pasture, crops, and livestock into a sort of semi-open woodland. Acorns fed pigs, shade protected grazing animals, and, scattered cultivation prevented soil exhaustion. This mattered in war-prone regions because, well, food sources were decentralized. Destroying a single field didn't collapse the system. Applying this today means, integrating animals where possible and planting mass-producing trees that provide calories for both humans and livestock without annual replanting. East Asian forest gardens quietly outperformed fields. In ancient Japan, long before industrial inputs, villagers managed layered forest gardens combining nut trees, fruit trees, shrubs, vines, and root crops. In what is now Japan, these systems provided steady calories with minimal labor once established. The lesson here is delayed payoff. These gardens required planning measured in decades, not seasons. For modern survivalists, planting slow-growing trees alongside fast annuals creates overlapping timelines of security. You eat early harvests while future calories mature. Trees were infrastructure, not decoration. Across cultures, trees controlled microclimates, stabilized soil, stored water, and acted as living granaries. Leaves became mulch, roots held nutrients, and canopies reduced evaporation. This wasn't symbolism, it was engineering. You can apply this by planting windbreaks, shade trees, and deep-rooted species around gardens and homesteads. The payoff isn't instant, but it compounds. Every year, labor decreases while resilience increases. Ancient agroforestry systems endured because they aligned with ecological processes instead of fighting them. They survived political collapse because forests don't stop producing when governments fail. That's the core lesson for historians and preparedness-minded viewers alike. If you want food security that survives instability, build systems that regenerate themselves. Start small. Integrate perennials. Think in decades. These aren't theories. They're tested designs with centuries of field data behind them. If this kind of deep historical analysis matters to you, subscribe to the channel. Share this video with others who care about real-world resilience and keep this archive alive. History isn't just what happened, it's what still works.